Well, welcome to another Waynos Fotos video. And I had a comment in my last video about tyres and wider tyres and tubeless and all that sort of stuff. So I thought I'd do a video on that. Now, the first thing that everyone needs to understand is wider tyres are not really being put onto road race bikes for comfort. They've been put onto road race bikes because it's an adaptation of tubeless. We need to get the pressures down so the sealant works better. And also you don't have as much pressure when you're going to a design of tyre that has a different characteristics which a tubeless and hookless have. So the lower the pressure, the constraints of the design work better at lower pressures. It's because if you go to a higher pressure, you need to have better hooks. And as you know, with a tubular, it's completely sewn up, so it's like encased. So this is why they're going to lower pressures. And when you go to lower pressures, you need to have a bigger air volume to compensate for that. So let's try that intro and let's get into the pros and cons of going to these wider tyres. Now, the big pro to having a wider tyre, which tubeless are doing, but you don't need to have a tubeless, any tubed or tubeless tyre or tubular, say, for which they use in high-end racing of even mountain bikes, is that it gives you more comfort. And when you're on a very rough surface, a wider tyre with a lower volume, it lowers the rolling resistance because it's not so much to do with the tyre design. It's got to do with the fact is that all of the undulations and rocks and everything are trying to lift the bike up. And if you've got the tyre absorbing that, it acts like a shock absorber. It then doesn't take away that energy of trying to lift the bike. The bike can continue to move forward and the tyre just deforms and rolls over that rock or that root or whatever that may be. So that is the advantage. And also the other advantage is it's just more comfortable to ride on because you've got this kind of really soft tyre. Well, anyway, that's about where it ends, because when you have a wider tyre, you have to, as a road racing tyre, not as a mountain bike tyre, because that's a completely different kettle of fish. We're talking about road racing, high-end bikes here. You have a lot of complications with that. Now, the first thing as well is you need to use more material. You need to make the wheels wider. You know, a lot of the wheels now have got extreme external and internal dimensions. So obviously if it's wider and some of these rims are twice as wide as they used to be, it's extra weight. And the tyre itself has more material, so it's going to be heavy as well. So you've got more rotating mass. The whole thing is heavier. Now, you might say, yeah, it's only 100 grams, 200 grams or whatever, but the bikes are already heavy. The disc brake bikes and the new group sets have increased in weight every increment that they've come out. So once we've had these bikes, we're increasing the weight on them, and now we're going to wider tyres, we're increasing the weight. Then we've also got the aerodynamics. A wider tyre is not as aerodynamic. It's just got to displace more air, and the whole bike has to be wider. The forks have to be wider. This whole thing that they reckon they're channeling the air between the tyre and the forks, even if that was working, it would be 1, 2, 3 watts. But I don't believe it is, because you still have a wider, the bike is becoming wider. It's like trying to push something this wide instead of this wide through the air. And we've even got the back axle is wider as well. And that's one of the problems that we also have going to wider tyres, because when you go to a wider tyre, you've only got so much space, because the bottom bracket design, or the width of the bottom bracket, is a restriction to the design, because all of the designs have to accommodate the bottom bracket designs that are on the market at the moment, and they usually have a set width, and they've already expanded into the housing area. That's why they went to press fit, so they could make the bottom end of the bike wider, and that was one of the arguments. It can be stiffer, ... But now we've got the dual chain ring, and we've got a wider tyre fitting there, but we can't make the actual whole bike wider, right? The bottom bracket wider. So what we need to do is we need to fit a wider tyre in there, and we still need to keep the alignment of the chain and the crankset all as it is, because that can't change. It's a proprietary design either from SRAM, Shimano, or Campagnolo. So as the tyre gets wider, you go, hang on a sec, what can we change? And the only thing they can change is the chain stays. So we're getting these chain stays getting thinner there, and as they're getting thinner, they're trying to make them a little bit higher to try and accommodate this tyre. So it's compromising the optimum design of the rear triangle. And this may be one of the reasons why they're dropping the seat stays to try and make a smaller triangle to make it a bit more rigid. But we even see with the gravel bikes, as they're getting so wide, they're actually putting like a little kick in it. Now, as soon as you do that, or as soon as you start to bend them outwards and they're not straight, you're compromising the tension capacity of that rear triangle, because it's not like they're working in compression. The triangle's working tension. You're transferring the weight. So as it tries to spread like this, then this one here is in tension and it prevents them from expanding. So that's how you get your rigidity from the triangle frame design. So that's why you want them to be straight. You want them to be straight like a string or straight like a spoke. It's like having a bent spoke. It's not going to be effective. It's going to want to straighten the bend out before it takes the tension. Same principle. And that's what you got to remember with a bicycle wheel. It's not the spokes are holding up the wheel. It's the spokes. The spokes are hanging, or the hub's hanging off the wheel. That's how it works. It's the ones that are in tension taking the load. So that is a compromise of design. And as we can see with gravel bikes, we've got this really difficult hook section that's just near the chainstay to accommodate the space, because they're taking it down to get it out of the way of this limited space they've got. And this is a compromise. So this is what you're getting with these wider tyres. It's not only like, hey, yeah, so what? I want a bike that fits wider tyres. The design of the frame not only needs to just be made wider, which you think, okay, well, what's the big deal? Well, the big deal is that causes compromises in the frame design. And the other thing as well, which people don't seem to understand, I keep hearing people saying they're running their tubeless tyres at 80, 90 PSI. Hey, guys, that is not the optimum way to run tubeless. The reason why, the one and main reason the manufacturers are going to tubeless and wider tyres is because they want to lower the pressure. Because the whole way that a tubeless tyre is designed is very, very different to a clincher or a tubular. They use unstretchable threads that go the whole rotation of the tyre. It's not actually held on by the hooks. It's held on by the fact that the tyre can't expand this way, so it can't come off the rim. So once you put it into the rim, right, that's why they're so difficult to get on, because you can't make them expand them to get them over the hooks. That's why they have that rib that's in the center of the rim. You can fit the tyre in, you can get a bit more space on the other side to get them over the hooks or over the hookless to get them into the tunnel or the duct of the rim, so you can put your tubeless or hookless on. And that's why you can run hookless, because you don't need hooks to hold them on. They have unstretchable threads. So what you're doing is when you're running 80, 90 PSI, you're putting a untold more pressure on these threads. And also the higher the pressure goes, the less effective the sealant works. That's why in the mountain bike world, tubeless really works well. You've got much less pressure. The sealant works a lot better. And also, you're riding over rough surfaces. So in the mountain bike world, tubeless is a better system for that application. On the road, it's not. Yes, if you ride on a gravel bike, you're taking it off-road and all that sorts of things, you can argue that some benefit. Otherwise, I don't believe that tubeless, where you're putting the sealant in, or hookless, where you're putting the sealant in, they just can't get it to work well on the road. Now, I know people say that they've had good experiences, but there's a lot of people who have had very negative experiences. It's a bit hit and miss. And the one reason why I say that is because I don't think the bicycle industry, when it comes to design and engineering, is mature enough to be able to get the tubeless system to work well. Now, if we talk about cars, we don't have to put any sealant in cars, and they're all running tubeless, and they're very, very reliable tyres. In the old days when we had cross-ply tyres, we used to get punctures all the time, and you had tubes in them, and you had to fix them. And flats were a pretty common thing. Everyone knew how to change a tyre back when I was a young boy. Whilst now, no one cares about, you might get maybe a flat once every 10 years. It's like very rare on modern day cars. And they don't need sealant to seal the tyre, because the interface between the tyre and the rim is designed very, very good. But in the bicycle industry, either they can't agree on the standards, or the manufacturing is not good enough to make the hook and rib that's on the tyre well enough. They just can't seem to get it working. You should be able to run a tubeless, like in the car industry, 50, 60 PSI, no sealant. And then if you have a problem, you can put the sealant in and put the tyre up. I don't know why they don't do that. That's the way cars work. You have a little canister. You only put the sealant in when you get a flat. Why they can't do that with bicycle tyres is beyond me. And the only reason I can come to is they just can't get the technology good enough. Now, you might say, yeah, but this tubeless are a new thing. Well, they're not. Tubeless have been around for a long, long time. They've been around for over 15 years, and they've been trying to sort this out. They started off with two-way rims, they used to call them, and then they moved to this tubeless ready, TLR, I think they call it now for short, and they've made the tyres a lot wider, and now they've gone to hookless, but they're still struggling to make the system a very reliable system, like with a tubular system or a clincher system. They're just having troubles getting there. Well, anyway, guys, that's my thoughts on it. When you think about going to these bikes with really wide tyres, like 30, 32 mil, have a think about and have a look at the frame design, especially the rear triangle, how they've designed the chainstays, and how that can impact on the bike. Even at the crown, you're going to have a bigger radius away from the crown because of the wider tyres. And also then you have to buy new rims. Everything needs to be new. It's, again, a huge expense to move to this new technology. So just have a think about that when you're looking and arguing for these wider tyres, just to get a bit more comfort. Leave your comments down below. This is a topic that does have some difference of opinion, so leave your opinions down below, and I will see you next vid. Cheers.